David Yost kind of compared Saturday to Christmas morning. As far as a new quarterback, he doesn't exactly know how Dakota will be. I know every season opener, you don't know exactly what you have, but is it more so this year just with Brady, new defensive scheme, Dakota at quarterback? Is it more, are there more unknowns for you?
Maybe it feels like that a little bit more than normal. Yeah, the Christmas part for me is always fall camp. You know, when you get those guys for the first time and you see Tristan Wallace for the first time, or so and so newcomer who you hear great things about, you expect great things from those guys, but you don't know until you get your hands on them and see them react to both positively and to adversity. And then the game is another level. And the thing that we always hope is guys just practice how they train, and that's what we try to reinforce constantly. And that whole gamer thing we don't believe in. Guys either are prepared, they're ready, they're trained, and they're going, or it's lower than that. I've never seen that guy that's better in a game, and so you just want them to experience some things. We'll do some things in the game on purpose to kind of rattle them. Check some things, change some things, just to see how we can do that in an in-game situation, and how they react and absorb that during the game is a different thing. Defensively, there's a bunch of new faces, the new leadership, all those things. But it's still just playing football. Go out there and play our face off and see what happens.
You said practice how they train. Did you mean play how they train?
Play. Sorry, I'm sorry. No.
Does Royce have any sort of, you're potentially, or you are starting three redshirt freshmen on the offensive line. You have a new quarterback. Generally, and correct me if I'm way off base, but the running back's not usually ever someone that's kind of a directly vocalized leadership in like the huddle or in the backfield. But because of Royce's experience mixed with some of the inexperience there, is there anything different about that?
I think I know what you're asking. We've asked Royce to be more vocal. That's not his nature, as many of you guys know. Charles Nelson has been a lot more vocal. Cameron Hunt has done a nice job of being a vocal leader, and so those guys can kind of compensate for some of that. We still need Royce to step up and be a little bit more vocal. But yeah, with the offensive line, Jake Hansen's he's been very assertive and confident in how he operates, and so that's a plus for a young guy. And it's funny when you think about those guys. We don't talk about how old they are or anything. We expect them to play perfectly and compete their tails off every snap. And certainly a big part of that is making sure they're on the right page from the beginning, and that starts with the play call, the quarterback, the center, and then it spreads on out.
You mentioned Jake Hansen. Have you seen his progression throughout fall camp in preparation for Saturday as well?
Yeah, he's been outstanding. He's a very, very good football player, versatile, can play several positions, and obviously playing center for us is a huge deal in running the show and getting us in the right protection, doing some of those things, and have a ton of confidence in him and can't wait to see him play.
Back to Tyson.
Is there any difference between what you guys are willing to use or show in early season non-conference games versus when you get into the Pac-12 season? As in, you want to use everything you got right now so other teams have tape on it, or is it kind of like a progression of what you guys use?
I think it's much more so the latter. I don't think we're not at a point, certainly offensively, where we can do everything we want to in especially in the first game where there are so many variables, the young guys, the newness at quarterback, all those things, and so you're going to filter it down to what they're confident in and what they've executed well, and so it's much more a byproduct of that. If you're gonna do it, that's right, we're more simply than not. It's because of that. At the same time, we have some guys that can do a lot of things that have played a lot of football at tailback, at receiver, and so we're going to still, incorporate a lot of the things that we've done here over the years, and do what the quarterback can do best, what the offensive line can do best, and hopefully execute it well.
Jack, over your left.
Coach, for a couple years there were some inconsistencies at kicker. Now Aiden Schneider comes in, very consistent kicker. I think he's like 30 of 33 in his career. Can you talk about maybe his personality, maybe things that he does that make him such a consistent kicker, as it is such a mental game sometimes?
The day I tried to start like analyzing and explaining kickers, I'm out of the business because I don't understand it. No, he has a perfect personality. He just jogs out there and kicks it through the uprights, and that's what we want him to do. And he's a quiet guy, another quiet guy by nature, but just kind of goes about his business, workmanlike kind of way. Appreciate how he does it. He's not one of those guys that, the laces and the pounds per square inch and the torque and the ratio and just kick it. And he's kind of that way. So really appreciate that about him.
Front seven as a whole, pretty inexperienced. There are some playing time they have there, but not a lot of starts. What's the confidence level there with that group? And then what do you want to see Saturday?
One would play just right on that edge, recklessly disciplined, persistent, chasing the ball, getting after the run game. These guys can pound the ball, get after the quarterback, and rotate in a bunch of guys. I think we have a lot of confidence in as the two deep is released, we're going to play all those guys in some form or fashion in a rotation. They're all going to get chances to make plays and to just compete their tails off and tap out, get somebody else in there, take a breather, and go out and do it again.
Obviously, Royce is the number one guy, but what do you hope to see from the other running backs behind him on the depth chart in this upcoming game?
Production and take care of the football, protecting. That's one thing when you're playing a first opponent, whether you have 10 years of film on them or, 0, they're going to do something different. They're going to do something we haven't necessarily prepared for a great deal. And that's where you just kind of fall back on your rules and everybody has a job, whether it's the quarterback, the offensive line, the receivers, the tailbacks, in terms of protecting the quarterback and protecting the football. So just playing with intelligence, great eyes, great meshes, all the things that go into our offense, and then doing what they do and making that one guy miss.
In your young guys and in your new guys, have you kind of seen a mental shift as far as fall camp mode into game week mode so far?
Definitely. Some guys, it just they're over saturated there last week, and they get to a point where they're playing against a million different defenses, again, speaking from an offensive standpoint, if I'm Tristan Wallace, I'm looking to the sideline, and I have no idea what signal's coming in terms of I don't anticipate it because it's not a game plan type of situation. This week, it's so much more pared down. They're able to see the first part of that signal, start to develop that picture in their head, and just play. And that's what you want for everybody, and to happen sooner rather than later. And it started to happen a little bit more at receiver, a little bit more. Some of the young guys on defense, you can just see them playing rather than, okay, this is right and left and check and this call and all the gears turning. Is just an instantaneous reaction to that.
Good, Janto.
With opponents that you don't play every year, I know most coaches kind of cast a wider net as far as film goes, but I was just curious, have you looked at all at the 2014 game when Montana State and Dakota played UC Davis?
Heard about that. I heard about that a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're watching. They have a bunch of returning guys, and so it's last year's film is relevant. In that many of the principles are going to be the same. They've moved a couple guys around from safety to linebacker and all that kind of stuff. But going much further back isn't as helpful. It might help him from a confidence standpoint from the score. But they have a couple new coaches, new special teams coordinator. So again, it's more about us talking about certainly the unique things that they do, and there's several, and then talking about Coach Foster's influence and some of the other things that may or may not come up.
Jerry?
Coach, from the spring through the fall, the freshmen, the redshirts who haven't had any game action yet, do you need a game or two before you can finish evaluating really what those guys could do, since you're practicing against each other so much?
Yeah, it's and I think you came in right there after asked about this, and that you don't know really what you have until they react to again, success or quote unquote failure for them, whatever, a drop ball, a missed assignment, a special teams error, how they respond to that really defines you as a football player, because it's not all roses, and so just of being persistent, being competitive every snap, mentally, regardless of the circumstances, is a huge deal, and you don't really know that until game time. We try to simulate it as much as possible with some prolonged drives and how we train our guys. They have to respond well to a bad play. They have to respond well to a good play. So we try to just ingrain that in them from the beginning. But a lot of those guys, we'll see.
You touched on talking about the freshmen there just a couple questions ago, but what about Troy Dye? How much improvement have you seen out of him, and what are you looking for on Saturday out of him?
Yeah, he's one. He's another guy that I can't wait to see him play. So that is like Christmas. I can't wait to see him play real life football because he's been awesome. Him, Brendan Schooler, a bunch of those young guys that particularly at linebacker. There's a bunch of guys there that are going to be great football players here before it's all said and done. And obviously we want it to happen Saturday, and we sure hope it does. But very excited to see how those guys do, not only defensively but in special teams. I think they're going to have a huge impact, and they've made us better just by making the veteran guys, the returning guys, amp up their game in whatever punt coverage, kickoff coverage, punt return game. Those guys have really juiced our depth chart a little bit, and again, very excited to see those guys compete.